Hello, everyone, and welcome back in. I am Aaron St. Dennis at FF Mad Scientist, joined today by Dan Whisner, who doesn't have his Twitter handle on, so you'll have to tell me what it is. I don't have it memorized. What is it?
Guys, hey, how's it going? Dan Whisner here. It's at DAWIZ_FFB, DeWizFFB.
All right, perfect. Well, this is the Mad Science Lab podcast brought to you by the combination of the Fantasy Football Universe and our new channel, the Fantasy Football Advice Network. So now that we've gotten through that, we are here for another edition of 2024 Dynasty Risers and Fallers. Before we get started, let's throw this over to Dan. Dan, briefly, tell us about yourself. Tell us, where you work, what it is you do, and where we can find all your content.
Hey guys, how's it going? For those of you that don't know me, I go by Wiz on Twitter. So I'm in financial analytics for the most part during the day. And obviously kind of picked up this fantasy football hobby like the rest of us here. So doing a lot of work with the Undroppables. Recently kind of came on to them a few months back. Loving the team over there and, kind of getting my feet wet and some of the podcast stuff. So really excited to join Eron today, but a lot of good stuff going on over at the Undroppables and ready to talk through some risers and fallers here today.
The Undroppables are interesting ones for me because I don't believe anyone uses their real name or their picture on Twitter. So I don't know who anyone is. I'll meet people at the expo and I'll be like, oh, that's who you are. Okay. All right. Even you, I was like, okay, Wiz, you don't know who anyone is because you use the entire company. You guys use I know the little circle with the line through it. That's the Undroppables. Yep. But other than that, you're all just the logos and that. So it's like me on the Mad Scientist where I just, for the longest time, I had an avatar. It wasn't a real picture. So I went to the expo last year and everyone's like, oh, so that's what you look like. So
it's kind of I guess it's kind of our thing. We're mysterious over there, but
yeah, it happens from time to time. All right, I guess we will get right into it. Your riser is Atlanta wide receiver Drake London. He is, through 2 years of his career, he has been wide receiver 31 and 37, 69 receptions last year on 110 targets, 905 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. The old keep trade cut value, which we use right now as a rule of how the general public values him. They have him 27. That seems high. 27th overall at wide receiver 14. Wow. And then Fantasy Pros has him as wide receiver 22, 37th overall. So the general public right now is insanely high on Drake London. So they have him wide receiver 14 versus wide receiver 22. Where do you fall on Drake London? Somewhere in the middle, higher, lower?
Yeah. So Aaron, I think I'm probably closer to that keep trade cut value, right? I think, as I was going through this process and looking at consensus on, ECR for Fantasy Pros, one thing I did notice was that he felt low to me there. And there's just a few reasons why. I think, he hasn't been in the best situation so far, right? I think we can all kind of agree on that. That those first 2 years with Arthur Smith and, Desmond Ridder really weren't the best conducive environment for fantasy production, right? Especially from the wide receiver. But he's an elite prospect. He's flashed, at times kind of what his ceiling can be. And it always helps when guys, like Matt Harmon are still kind of pounding the drum on somebody like him. But I mean, there's a few reasons why that I'm still pretty high on him. I think I've probably honestly got him inside that 14 rank. I think you said on keep trade cut right now. Yeah. I would probably have him closer to, kind of at top 12 or just inside that top 12, specifically for a couple of reasons, right? I think we're about to get an upgrade from a play calling standpoint. I think, Zach Robinson coming in with Raheem Morris is something we should be excited about for all the fantasy producers in Atlanta. But if they can bring a version of, kind of Robinson coming from that McVay tree, if they can bring a version of that over, we've seen wide receivers produce in that environment quite a bit. And he's just still so young. So he's a guy that with that prospect profile, with kind of what we've seen and some of the underlying metrics here that I'll get into in a minute, that's probably where I am. Where are you at with him?
See, it's tough for me. I like what you're saying about the coaching change. I love that. What worries me is scenario 1, his quarterback is Desmond Ridder. Scenario 2, they draft a quarterback. It's not going to be one of the top ones. I don't know if that's much better for him. Scenario 3 might be my favorite, is if they go and get a free agent, but
Yeah.
even that, I guess that would probably be the best scenario. For me, he's kind of in no man's land. I look at this and I would say my hard drop off at receiver, where I really want to make sure I have 2 by the time we get here, is 18 with T. Higgins. Then it gets into the range of Nico, Rashi, London, Flowers, Dell. Like, I love a whole bunch of them there. That's where it goes for me. In this range here of 2 or 3 above him and 2 or 3 below him, Nico, Rashi, him, Flowers, and Dell. And I don't know if I'd take him over any of them. How do you feel? Do you have him over Nico, Rice, Flowers, or Dell?
So I've definitely got him over Rice. Rice is somebody that I've kind of put my thoughts out there on Twitter a little bit. I'm not saying that Rishi isn't a good player. I worry about his ability to kind of sustain some of that production that he's got.
Well, I worry they're going to draft someone too, but
just he doesn't win in the traditional wide receiver sense down the field. So when it comes to somebody like that versus London, I'll take London there. The other thing with like somebody like T. Higgins, right? I think we've all been kind of waiting for, that T. Higgins season. I think we've seen flashes of it. It kind of looks like he's going to be going back to Cincinnati on the franchise tag at this point. So maybe he's going to be that 1B to chase again this year. But when I look at like those true alphas, right? The ones that get into that top 12 range, they're the number 1 targets kind of on their team at the wide receiver position. Right. And, one thing that I think about with Nico, I think he's been fantastic. I just don't know if he's going to be a free agent this upcoming year, and Tank Dell's back. Right. So are you going to have a situation where it's Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, something like that? Or is it going to be another San Francisco situation where, look, there's a lot of people to get the ball to. While I do like Kyle Pitts, I think it's just London is the absolute alpha in that passing game. And I think that new kind of OC is going to prioritize that. One of the things I think you did say, Aaron, is probably that I'm more bullish on than anything else, is that they will figure out the quarterback, right? I think if you look at one of the perfect scenarios is if they go get Kirk Cousins, I think it's just like wheels up for not only London, but that entire offense. And that's a scenario that probably keep trade cuts baking in a little bit with that 14 ranking. But again, when I look at some of the underlying stuff, I mean, some of the things that I rely on, that I really love are like targets per route run, first downs per route run, and then also XFP per route run. Right. And, I look back, and since London's come into the league, if you look at wide receivers that have run 500 routes, right, since the beginning of last year, he ranks 14th in targets per route run. He ranks 15th in first downs per route run, and he ranks 14th in XFP for route run. And I think one of the most exciting things that when I look at that, right, is if you look at the wide receivers ahead of him in each of those ranks, right, he's top 14 or top 15 in each of those. The wide receivers ahead of him are averaging 18 points a game, right? So when you look at the players with that kind of profile that are hitting some of the thresholds that he's hitting, they're averaging about 18 points a game, whereas London through his career, I think he's coming in at about 12, right? So I just think there's room for upside there. And the other thing is, right, when you look at those wide receivers that are averaging that, right now, there's 6 wide receivers in that group, right, that are under the age of 25 hitting those metrics. It's Justin Jefferson, it's Jamar Chase, it's CeeDee Lamb, it's Amon-Ra, and Puka Nacua, right? Every single one of those guys is ranked inside the top 10, with 4 of those guys being ranked inside the top 5. So it's kind of a situation where I'm betting on talent here a bit, Aaron.
Yeah, I like his talent as well, and I like the coaching change. I just don't know how high I can rank him or move him up right now until I see the quarterback. Like Kirk Cousins, excuse me, Kirk Cousins, yep, I would move him up. I'd be on board. The one I'm thinking, it seems like it's increasingly likely. I'm looking at their draft capital. They have a 1, a 2, a 3, 2 4s, a 5, and 2 6s. I've been hearing they could make a move and trade for Justin Fields. I think I prefer Kirk Cousins for him over Fields. What would you say?
Yeah, I'd probably prefer Kirk there as well. I will say, given the situation that he's had up until this point, I'm not the biggest Fields truther, but I think we could probably all agree that Fields would be an upgrade over anybody that they've had. And the other nice thing is we've just seen Fields support a wide receiver 1 and DJ Moore, right? So we've seen him be able to do that if he's coming in there.
For me, it comes down to I don't have too many shares of him in any of my leagues, and at this point, I think his cost is getting to the point where if I were to acquire him now, I'm buying pretty high. I think he could go higher. I just don't know how much more room I have here. Like, I think this is going to be someone where if this shakes out properly and he becomes a wide receiver one, I'm going to say, crap, I should have bought a few shares, but I don't think, like, I like him. I just don't know if I want to buy in at this price. Part of, like, I wish I had bought him at the end of last season when he was cheaper. It's just, he seems to be getting higher and higher in cost right now. I like him, and I definitely like the potential. I just don't know if I want to pay wide receiver 14 cost. I think he could end up as wide receiver 14 very easily. I just don't know if right now I want to pay wide receiver 14 cost.
Yeah,
so
that's fair.
All right, and we will get to your faller. That is Jacksonville running back Travis Etienne. He's played 3 seasons, kind of. His first season didn't play. What was it? Liz Frank injury in the preseason, missed the whole rookie year. Second year, if you want to call it that, he was RB17, RB3 last year. 1,008 rushing yards, 11 touchdowns, 58 receptions for 476 receiving yards and a touchdown. Over on Keep Trade Cut, he's currently RB8, 37th overall. The interesting part here, Fantasy Pros, the experts really are going heavy on the running backs here. So Keep Trade Cut has him as RB8. Fantasy Pros has him as RB6. Keep Trade Cut, 37th overall. Fantasy Pros, 15th overall. So he moves up 2 RB slots, but 22 draft slots, because these experts in the Fantasy Pros rankings are hammering running back right now. So yeah. I like him. He's in this second range here. And I had this conversation yesterday. I think the player yesterday we spoke of was Kyron Williams. So group tier 1 on their rankings is Bijan, Brees, Gibbs, McCaffrey. And then tier 2 is Taylor, Etienne, and Williams. And and Etienne. I was saying that I think Etienne and Williams need to be dropped down to tier 3, and Taylor and Etienne belong closer up in tier 1. So I think I have Etienne in my top 6 here. In Dynasty, it's different. I don't think I wouldn't pass him, or I wouldn't put him over Taylor, Gibbs, Hall, or Bijan. But if you are a rebuilding team, I probably don't have any running backs, but I'd take him over McCaffrey. Obviously, you take McCaffrey if you're a contender, but I think I have him pretty easily 6th here. Where do you think you have him?
I honestly, when I look through this, right, and this is not to say that Travis Etienne's a bad player. You know, I had a few shares of him, and I actually exited out of those mid-season last year. And again, this is no knock on the player, but to me, he's just at his ceiling from a value perspective. I have a hard time.
He just can't go any higher. That's why I said,
exactly.
Like, who was he going to pass in that list that I read? There's nobody.
Exactly. And so, like, when I think about, you know, this faller exercise, right? If I see a running back that, you know, is going to be, again, not saying he's hitting the age cliff or anything like that, but if I don't see a ceiling for him to climb even higher, and when you look at the potential running back class coming in next year, that's definitely going to supplant some of these guys. To me, I'm just looking to get out high. And that's just kind of how I operate from a dynasty running back perspective is, look, I'll look to get out before probably the value starts to tank.
You know what's interesting, though? He seems so young because he lost that rookie season. He turns 26 this year. I didn't realize he was that old, like, as opposed to Kyron Williams, who's 23. Just like, you're right. Like, I like him and I love him for having him this year. But aside from McCaffrey retiring, excuse me, I get the hiccups tonight. Aside from McCaffrey retiring, there's not really any room for him to move up. Whereas he could easily be passed by Kyron, Achane, Walker, White, Cook, Pacheco. There's a half dozen or 8 that could easily pass him. And realistically, there's only one he could pass in McCaffrey because of age. But he's only 2 years younger. I think it's 2 years younger than McCaffrey. Let me look up. I don't have McCaffrey's age on me right now. Let me look.
And I think the way you phrase it like that, Aaron, is kind of, you know, how I look at an exercise like a faller exercise, right? Is
under 2 years younger than McCaffrey. So it's a year and a half. For as old, and everyone says McCaffrey's, you know, he's not the dynasty guy because he's getting towards the end. He's only a year and a half older than Etienne. So, and like Bijan, Hall, Gibbs, Taylor. Well, Taylor, I think, is the same age or a year older. But Bijan, Bryce, and Gibbs are all younger. So you're right. There's no room to go up for him.
Yeah, I mean, personally, like, you know, as some people who may know me on Twitter, I'm quite a Tajay Spears guy, right? So if I'm an ETN owner, I would definitely be looking to explore maybe tearing down to somebody like a Tajay Spears and looking for a plus on top.
I
Whether
would
that's a
say a
pick at
big plus. If you're going Tajay Spears, I know the Tajay Spears hype is getting out of control, but you're going from RB6 on their rankings to 21. So I would say you're looking probably Tajay Spears and a first, or at least an early second is what I would say.
Yep. Yeah, and I think right now, if you can do that and go out in 25 and get that first, right, where those 25s are a little bit cheaper right now, and you've got a great running back class coming in, you could be looking at, Tajay and one of those young running backs next year. And if that shakes out of what you got for ETN, who then drops down to, let's call it, 9 or 10 going into next year, I think you're plus that you're coming out ahead there. And again, this is more of I just don't know where he has to go as far as up.
Well, yeah, because like you said, there's everyone above him is younger with probably more upside. I didn't realize he was almost at the age apex himself, so that's interesting. Like there's only room to go down basically, unless he were to just have some ridiculous season. But he was RB, what did I say last year? RB3 last year.
RB3.
He's still only 6 overall, so it's not like there's really room to go. I guess this offense could be better, but I don't know. I can't see a way in which, like, I like him. Don't get me wrong. He's a great player.
Same.
I just don't see any room. This seems like the ultimate cash out high spot. I don't even know. Like you said, Tajay Spears in a good pick. I think you could tear down to even like an Achane or Kyron Williams in a pick. Like I think Ken Walker in a pick. I think he's so high in value. You just tear down wherever you can. So. All right. Yeah. Before we get out of here, you want to take one more chance here to tell everyone where it is they can find your work.
Yeah, guys. So Twitter handle, DAWiz_FFB on Twitter. Been posting a lot of prospect threads on there recently, kind of taking a look at mainly some of the wide receivers at first, but be diving into some of the running back prospects here in this upcoming class, and working on some stuff coming out with the Undroppables here for an anatomy series with Jax Falcone, and chalking some of the team over there. So really excited to kind of get that going. But yeah, feel free to check me out. And, Eron, thanks again for having me on, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome, man. Thanks for joining me. It was great. This concludes this edition of 2024 Dynasty Risers and Fallers. Check back tomorrow for the next one in the series. This has been the Mad Science Lab podcast on Fantasy Football Universe with the Fantasy Football Network. Take care, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow.